A few months ago, I ran into a friend that I hadn't seen in a long time, and as she went in for a hug, I gave her a warning. "I'm sorry if I smell like cigarettes, but I just came from the strip club." The look on her face of shock is one that I see often because I forget that saying, "Oh, I went to the coffee shop with my friends, then I went to the strip club, and then I got groceries," is not a typical answer for, "Oh, did you do anything fun this weekend?" It's at this point in the conversation that I usually have to answer the unasked question, "But why were you at the strip club on a Saturday?" And I tell people, well, the truth is that the women that I visit in the clubs and the men, women, and children that are in the sex industry are just as vulnerable, just as exploited, and just as coerced by life's circumstances to be there as women that are sex trafficked. It was 8 years ago when I was 14 that I was first exposed to sex trafficking. At the time, I didn't know what it was, and I wouldn't come to know what that meant until college, but I had the opportunity to meet a woman who had narrowly escaped trafficking and lived with my family for about 9 months. It was her story and her life since then that has continued to inspire me to fight for justice in the world and in my local community. So in my first 2 years at UNF, I was studying mechanical engineering and on the side, researching anything about human trafficking I could get my hands on. It was after those 2 years that I really grew very passionate about seeing women freed from sexual exploitation. And so in my third year of school, halfway through my junior year, I decided mechanical engineering wasn't going to give me the skills I wanted or needed to pursue justice for these victims, so I changed my major to social work. As I was waiting to be accepted into the program, I continued to watch any documentary on sex trafficking, prostitution, pornography, anything related to sexual exploitation, and read just about any book I could get my hands on. I was also preparing for a trip to Thailand for 5 weeks to work in the red light districts there and to learn from FBI and police around the world. To say that my eyes were open and that my heart was shattered when I visited Pattaya would be an understatement. Pattaya is known as the sex tourism capital of the world, and men will travel there from around the world to go purchase sex from men and women and children caught in slavery there. As I walked down the streets, I saw women who had numbers pinned to the little bathing suits that they had on so that foreign men could easily identify which women they wanted to purchase for sex that night. I also walked down street after street after street full of girly bars, brothels, strip clubs, anything you can think of, it was there. One that was particularly memorable to me was Soy Six. It was a 9 p.m. on a Tuesday, so it wasn't a busy night by any means for the industry there. But in a quarter of a mile, we counted nearly 40 strip clubs and over 500 women who were there to sell their bodies, and those were just the ones that we saw. That night, I couldn't go to sleep because of what I had seen. The fear and shame and guilt and desperation you could feel as you walked down the street. And for the women that I was lucky enough to make eye contact with, I saw it in their eyes. I think it's a powerful testament to the harm that is caused by the sex industry when even those who aren't directly involved in the purchasing or selling of sexual services, and most importantly of people, are still impacted by the trauma that they see. So after that trip this past summer, I knew that I wanted to continue this work in Jacksonville. And so I joined a group of amazing women who visit local strip clubs on Saturdays. There, my first visit wasn't too shocking because I had been in lots of bars and strip clubs in Thailand, and I felt relief at the ability to speak the same language as the women working there. But that relief quickly turned to sadness and despair as I heard story after story of victimization. Because these women at the strip club are victims too. To say that women in the sex industry are there consensually and by choice is to say that they knew the entirety of what they were signing themselves up for, and that there was nothing in life that put a burden on them to be there. Their choice is more or less a lack of choice. I know women there who have shared stories about how they're there to put food on the table for their children, that they were raised in poverty, that they had been sexually abused as children, and now this is where they've ended up. And that's just the trauma and the victimization that started before they joined the industry. There's countless stories after being in the industry that they could share about sexual abuse, sexual assault, all while in their consensual job. As the evidence continues to mount to show how harm is caused to an individual when they are treating themselves as an object and selling themselves for the sexual pleasure of another, I knew that something had to be done. And so we know the harms now, we know who the victims are, and we know that something needs to be done. And for me, as an individual, as a college student, I'm gonna continue working on a small scale and going into the strip clubs and just building relationships with the women there over a shared meal. We help them build resumes, help them find childcare, help them with any needs they may have, from moving to purchasing Christmas gifts for their children. For our city, it might look like identifying how big of a need we truly have. And then once we know that need and we know the scope, how are we best going to delegate our resources to these victims as well? And then as a nation, I know we need to see change in our attitudes and our policy, because once we start to change our attitudes, we're really going to see a shift in how we serve these victims. Thankfully, in Jacksonville, I've gotten to see that shift already start by great leaders who are here and who know the harms and effects of the sex industry, even if it's portrayed as consensual. And I have hope that we'll continue to see change, but that it'll be the most effective once all of our resources come together to serve and support those that we often overlook. And so it's with that I want to expand the circle and include victims of sex trafficking, of prostitution, of places that we might not see as crime, but we know that there is countless abuse. Thank you.